Hi guys, Aceface back with another video for you, and I'm back with some more advanced Tyranid tactics, advice from the hive mind, hitting you up with some post FAQ advice and guidance. Right guys, before we get started, I just wanted to point your attention to a couple of things. If you'd like to follow me, you can catch me over on Instagram. I'm absolutely posting left, right and centre. It's a really good place to follow me there. You can see all of my work in progress pictures, everything that I'm getting up to. You can have a look at over on Instagram, and as I said, extremely active there. If you'd like to also, you can follow me over on Facebook. I generally put a little bit less up on Facebook, but you can see quite often when I'm going to post live shows, and if there's any really key information, I'll put it on Facebook as well. And of course, please do like, comment and subscribe to this video. That helps me tons. If you'd like to help me further, you can be a backer over on Patreon, where we've got lots of different cool perks where you can get dice, t-shirts, exclusive access to my Discord server where you can speak with other like-minded wargamers. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's jump straight into this video. Okay guys, so we are now post FAQ, the big FAQ. So I'm making this video the 24th of April. So we've had now, we've had a week basically since the big FAQ. So the dust is starting to settle, and I've had an opportunity now to collate my thoughts and kind of decide where I kind of feel things are. And what I thought would be very interesting, I'm sure you guys have heard lots of different videos and feedback from other content producers that are telling you about the general, what's the feeling around what they think is good, bad, indifferent from the FAQ, and they've broken it down so they can talk into detail about all the different parts. Well, I'm not going to do that today because I'm sure you're all bored of that, but what I want to talk to you about is a little bit about my first impressions, but particularly how I feel it will affect the Tyranids, and kind of let you know where we are with it, because ultimately I've been giving you lots of advice around taking lots of hive tyrants, around all these different tactics, that actually that meta has changed, and the way to use your army is going to be a little bit different. So let's kind of jump in on overall feelings around the FAQ. So overall, I am really happy. I think it's a great change for the game, majority of the FAQ. So I think the Battle Brothers is great. It absolutely doesn't go further enough. What we really want to do is get to a position where you are almost punished for taking several different armies, because if you're taking the advantages of papering in the gaps of the weaknesses in the army and strengthening them with strengths from other armies, then I feel that there should be a caveat, and that caveat needs to be losing warlord traits, losing stratagems, whatever it might be, of those additional armies that you bring to the fold. So I think the Battle Brothers rule is a step in the right direction. I think it means we will see slightly less Celestines, because I don't think that many people want to be taking minimum detachments of sisters. They're still decent, but I think that might reduce those. Same with a few other of those characters and a few other little tricks of the trade that the Imperium are doing, and also the same with Chaos. You'll see less of those paste-in Nurglings and things like that that do really support and help your armies. So it's a definite step in the right direction, but 100% it needs to go further. It needs to make the game a little bit more flavourful by really immersing yourself in an army. And if you do decide to take additional allies in a match play game, there should be a penalty to that, and at the moment there still isn't really that. The rule of 3 I absolutely love, and you might be going, well, Aceface, that's crazy, you love to spam. Well, actually I don't love to spam. What I love to do is I love to build armies in a really competitive manner, in a way that I feel will do best on the battlefield and to achieve the best results. I like to play hard and I like to play efficient, and to do that actually taking spam is taking and taking multiple of the same unit that is in a very efficient unit is the way to do that. And actually, if you're not doing that, you're not maximising your opportunity within the game. So an element of spam I absolutely am 100% behind, and it's something that I've been using to a great effect for the last 3 editions, not just this edition. So losing that, absolutely, it makes you think a little bit more about your army list, and that's where it's good. And that's where it's great for the game, because what you're going to see is you're going to see a variety of armies. The more opportunity we get to see more models, more different types of armies, more different type of army styles and tactics, the better for the game and the better it will make all players, because you're going to need to adapt to lots of different various styles rather than just 1 or 2, because ultimately that's how people are playing. If you're playing a Tyranid army, if you're playing against a Tyranid army currently, you know the likelihood is in a competitive environment you are going to be seeing lots and lots of Flyrants. If you're going against Death Guard or Chaos, you're probably going to be seeing the Plague Burst Crawlers. If you're going against Elder, you're going to see lots of Reapers. The list goes on, and to reduce that is a good thing for the game. So I'm all for it, even though potentially it makes me have to readjust a lot of my armies in the way that I play. But that's a good thing, and it will make me a better player, and it will make you a better player. So I think the rule of 3 is probably the best rule of all of the new FAQ that's come out. So moving on to the battlefield deployment rules. So now, having to, if you decide to deep strike a unit in, and you do it on the first turn, you can only do it in your own deployment zone. Now there are some caveats to that. Genestealer Cult are not affected by that, and we will talk a little bit about that when we talk about what affects Tyranids. So they're out, they don't have to worry about it, and also quite a few of the after deployment stratagems and ways armies work also are not affected by it. So Alpha Legion, Raven Guard, they also can still do their tricks to get themselves up into your opponent's face pretty quick and effectively early. Other than that, everything else will have to deep strike into your own deployment zone, or will have to deep strike anywhere turn 2. And that's not a bad thing, because ultimately what that means is that you're tactically having to play around with lots of things. So if you're the defending player and you know that your opponent's going to drop in, you've got to be thinking about spanning out and denying more space, but also, you know, not giving him avenues where he can drop in and cause trouble. If you're the attacking player, you've got to think, well, actually I need enough stuff on the board, because I've physically got to fill the right criteria. I also need the stuff on the board that's definitely going to score me objectives and achieve me what I need to do in that first turn. So it's making you think about that. But that sort of strike element is definitely not dead, and that's nice because I like that kind of element. I think that's really, really, really important. The smite and the character rule are pretty much in place. They have tweaked the smite beta rule, so obviously now you can do multiple smites a little bit better, because you're not constantly just getting the -1. It's a +1 to cast, so it just generally works out a little bit better, and it's nice that the Brotherhood and the Sorcery one, so if you've got those sort of units that depend on small smites, you've still got use of that, because that's not effective. And that's a nice change to it as well. So it's only a subtle little change, but actually I like it, and I think it's an effective change. The character rule, yeah, that's fine. It kind of works. Some bits around it I'm not 100% loving, but you know, let's move on from that, because we could talk about each and individual rule forever. The terrain rules around charging, that is a very big bone of contention. It's a bit of a silly one, particularly when you take your Tyranid mindset on and you're playing with monsters. Those monsters potentially can be within, you know, inches away from those characters, but because they're up on a second level or a slightly higher level, you suddenly can't attack them. That does seem a bit ludicrous, but it's a very difficult one for Games Workshop to rule, and they just need to have a little think about how they're going to get around that, because I don't think that currently that really fits the purpose. Because in match play, what you're going to find is there's going to be units that actually are physically impossible to touch if you don't have enough shooting, or you don't have enough psychic powers to dislodge them. It's not the end of the world, because most armies will have that capability, but it's still something to factor in, and it does seem a little bit ludicrous in certain situations. So moving on from that, when we kind of drop into a few of the other little bits and pieces, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is of course the Flyrant. So the Flyrant now, not only can you only take 3 because of the rule of 3, it also has had a points increase. That points increase, to be fair, is not a big deal. It's a lot fairer. They were way too cheap, so those points, it's not a big problem. You'll still easily get 3 in and have tons of points to play with. So I don't think that points increase is a problem. That, combined with obviously the rule of 3, means that you will never see more than 3. Fair, funny enough. But I think that's fair, and I don't think there's a problem with that. You're definitely not seeing me moaning and groaning. I had lots of Flyrants before, you know, so I've still got them. They're not going to make match play, but I can still use them in narrative or apocalypse games, no problem whatsoever. So I have no concerns around it whatsoever. The Biovore's got a points increase. I'm not sure whether they needed it with the rule of 3 coming in, personally, but I suppose at 38 points a model they were a little bit cheap, and they were probably too cheap because you were able to make up those detachments so quickly. So those changes in points. Reaper's got the change, which is great. Again, Reapers probably aren't even still enough expensive, but there we go. And a few other points got tweaked. So other rules that really kind of are important to touch on: the powers that once you've come at the end of your movement phase, if you've arrived from reserve, you can no longer move. And that sounds a bit convoluted, but what I'm talking about is warp time, and particularly Hive Commander for the Swarm Lord. You can't use those abilities when something comes onto the battlefield. That's a huge problem. That's, for me, is a little bit too much. I'm not sure that was necessary with the changes in the first turn deep striking. I think that's a little bit too much. I just don't think it's necessary. That I'm frustrated with. That's one of the worst things for me. I don't mind the fact that we've stopped the charging in the first phase. I have no issue with that. But I do have an issue with then really stopping the reliability of that second turn charge, because already you're hard hitting big unit, you've got to sacrifice off the board for a whole turn, but now even when it comes in you're losing the mechanisms to give it a much more reliable charge, and I feel that's a bit of a shame, and that really is starting to pull away those mechanisms from an assault army, and we don't want it just to be a shooting game. So my feedback, and there is an opportunity for anybody to feedback their thoughts to Games Workshop, and you can email them straight through. I think we're all in the same boat as competitive players and as content producers. Please don't just email them and rave at them, because that's not going to help. Give them some constructive feedback. Tell them what you don't like and how you think it could be changed. And I think they'll take that on board. They're not going to take everything on board, but you know, if enough of that message gets through, then hopefully we can see some changes that we want. And for me, that's one of the changes that we could really do with. I just think it's too much, and it's absolutely not necessary. So that's my take on it. And I'm sure I would be very interested to hear what your take on that is. So that for me is the biggest changes. There are lots of changes in there, and potentially we'll touch on them more as we go through for the rest of this video, but they're the kind of the big points, and I think on the whole they've really made a successful go at this FAQ. There's things that need to be changed and need to be tweaked, but they're going in the right direction. So I appreciate what Games Workshop have done, and I think they're going in the right direction. So now let's go on to Tyranids and how Tyranids affected. How are we looking? Well, the one thing I didn't touch on was the increase of command points for your battalion and your brigade to encourage people to take those big detachments. Now, Tyranids make detachments very cheaply, so that is a huge buff for us. Particularly if you're like me and you like to build brigades, you now get the opportunity to get so many command points. It's just ridiculous, because you are, you've got tons, and that's really helping you out, do all the things you need, particularly with Tyranids not having an easy way of farming those command points, unlike other armies that can do that. So, for me, building brigades is a great way to go. So do that 100%. My advice would be carry on building your brigades, carry on building your battalions, and you'll have a lot of luck with that. So that's one big great thing to start the ball rolling for what Tyranid and Tyranid players have now got. They've got an opportunity to get more command points to do all those great cool things. So let's talk about some other cool things. So let's talk about those things that we've already spoke about that are potentially not great for the game, but actually let's talk about that advanced tactics piece around Tyranids and what works for us. Well, let's think about Hive Guard. Let's think about Biovores. Now, those units are both infantry units, so they can go into those ruins, up onto those second floors. They've got quite big bases. You can stick them in there, and then suddenly these units are unable to be assaulted. So while that loophole, while that poor mechanism is currently in place, make the most of them. Those units are some of our best units that we've got. You need to be looking at using that to your advantage. You need to be looking at that to really make the most of those units, to stop them getting assaulted, because particularly now, your enemy's not going to be able to get to them as quickly because of the way that they can't come in first turn. They're a little bit safer there, and then you've got them in a ruin, or you've got them in a second level of something. They're becoming even safer because they don't need line of sight as well. You're in a really great place there, because things can't shoot them now. They can't assault them either. So your Biovores and your Hive Guard just got a hell of a lot better, and something. Take all the advice that I put in my Biovore video, and you can absolutely take that and use that and bring that to the bank. That hasn't changed. And I will do a video on Hive Guard coming up, because I think Hive Guard are extremely strong and they've just got stronger again. So another great thing for the Tyranids, a great tool that you've got, and something really to be pleased about in the time being. We're going to need to continuously adapt. That's what 8th edition is going to be about. Particularly for the next still year, you're going to have to continue to adapt. You're going to have to continue to keep learning and using the tricks that we've got and the tricks that the book has given us. So that's a great thing to do. So look to be using that. Other things that are still very cool for us. Hive Tyrants, still cool. Still resilient. They've not lost that invuln save. They're still very reasonably pointed for what they can do. They're still a unit with a hell of a lot of flexibility. So still use those Tyranids. Use those Hive Tyrants. Having free flying Hive Tyrants is still really strong. Let's talk about some other bits and pieces that you can use. Well, now with that meta changing, you're going to need shooting. You're going to need the ability to survive shooting. So what you probably want to be looking at again now is looking at getting those Malanthropes back on the table. Now you're not being able to depend on a full impact army, because you need to have so much on your board. The Malanthropes are going to be another go-to unit again. You're going to want to get them back on the table to reduce your enemy's effectivity at shooting you down first turn before you get the stuff that you want to bring in. So again, you want to be using those. You want to be making sure that they've got a nice web, maybe one, maybe two. Potentially at the points level they're a little bit too expensive at 2, but I would say that now almost every army you probably want to be looking at building is with a Malanthrope in place. Gaunts. Now gaunts have always been a good unit for us, and now they're a unit you probably want to be looking at maximising. You want to be maximising them. You want to make sure that you're getting that ball coverage. You want to be making sure that you're spreading across, taking ground, making sure that they're running with those Malanthrope to make it very difficult for the enemy to deal with them. I would make sure that on the whole you want to be taking majority of your gaunts in a Leviathan detachment, so you're getting a 6-up after save while they're round that Malumthrope. You've suddenly again got big hordes of troops that are going to flood forward. They're going to take your objectives. They're going to take a little while for the enemy to chew through, with the -1 particularly. They're going to buy you time, and they're going to stop the opponent getting into your back lines, which is where you're hiding your Biovores and your Hive Guard that are starting to do damage. So that's a real core tactic and something to look at. I still have a bit of a soft spot for the Tervigan. Point for point, I've had several conversations with people that are extremely good players, and they disbelieve that they are worthwhile. They believe that you might as well spend all those points on more Termagants, because ultimately that's all really you're using the Tervigan for, is to continue to respawn those Termagants up to that initial size. But ultimately, you're spending a lot of points on a one model that's not going to do much damage, and it's not going to do much else apart from just birthing gaunts. I still think there's something to them. They're a toughness 8 monstrous creature with lots of wounds. They can hit okay in combat, but ultimately they're a synapse creature, and they will soak up a bit of fire. So I think there's still something to be said by having Tervigants. But point for point, you probably just want to be having as many gaunts on the board as you can, with your backfield, with the shooting presence of Biovores and with Hive Guard, and then you've got your 3 Flyrots that are going to drop in. That's kind of a really strong core of your army. So that's probably your new go-to. Lots and lots of gaunts, Malumthrope for effectivity, Leviathan detachment, Biovores, Hive Guard. There's still people are on the fence with Hive Guard. I think they're incredibly good. They're very, very powerful. Their only sticking point is their range is a little bit short, so you need your opponent to be getting into the mid-ground. But ultimately, quite a lot of the time, that's where the objectives are. And if you've got a unit that can start to hit and pile on the pressure that can't be taken out very easily, I still think there's a really strong argument for Hive Guard in most competitive lists. But, the jury's out. Love to hear your opinions. So that's kind of the core of your list, of your new competitive Tyranid list. Now, how do you then look at some other bits and pieces? So this is when potentially we can start to look at Genestealer Cult, because Genestealer Cult are doing something that very few other people are able to do, which is that cult ambush, and that is the thing of putting some pressure on your opponent early. So what you can do is you can do it in a couple of different ways. You can either take Genestealers, which is your obvious go-to choice. So you can take a block of Genestealers, you can take a Primus, you can probably take a Magus in there, just because the psychic support is very, very handy. And then you can use the Primus's is reroll, and you can make it very, very effective for that unit to have a very, very strong chance of rolling a 5 or 6 and be able to be hitting your opponent in the first turn. And that's great, because most armies now are not going to be set up with an effective scream anymore, because your go-to now is, I don't really need a really effective screen. I don't want to be spending all my points, because I don't think people are going to get to me that quickly. So I can afford to spend more points on the shooting stuff that's probably sitting behind the screen. Now the Genestealer Cult have the ability then to really cause havoc and to start to get in your opponent lines. So by taking a detachment of Genestealer Cult, you're going to be able to do that. So Genestealers are your obvious choice. Acolytes are also not a bad way, because again you can build some battalions. So you can do exactly as I said. You can take your Primus, you can take your Magus. Now you can take a few units of Acolytes. One of those units you can make a big unit. You can put in some of those specialist weapons that are very expensive, but actually if you can guarantee that 5 or 6, which you probably can, they will do some serious work to some heavy hitting units. So absolutely something not to be discounted. You would never normally take those big heavy weapons if you're going to take it with other units like Gene Stealers that you're going to throw into your opponent's army, because the chances are, you know, your Primus is only going to be able to be coming in and doing the work with one unit. You can't be doing it with multiple units. So, you know, you want wherever you're going to go with, you need to invest in there. So if you're going to go with Acolytes, you know, you put your points into Acolytes and you make them good. You stick a banner on there for re-rolling ones. You have the Primus in there, and you by very, very quickly you've got a unit there that will do an incredible amount of damage. So that's what I'd be looking at. And then you have the option. You have the option now, and we're going now to we're setting the level now to the competitive cheese factor 10/11, and I'm not even sure if I want to go this far. But ultimately, if we're talking real advice and we're talking serious competitive tactics, you then probably, so you've got your brigade, or probably more likely be battalion of Tyranids. You've then got a small battalion of Gene Stealer Cult. Then you want to be looking at a really small Imperial Guard Astra Militarum detachment, so you can get your CP farming. And that's really ridiculous. I don't like it, but ultimately, in a edition and a place where those command points are so important, and you have the opportunity to have so many, and you can then keep farming those, you can then be doing all the tricks all the time. And ultimately that's so important, because when you've got things like Dark Eldar now who can turn off stratagems, you've got so many different things going on, you need to be able to counter that, and the strength of the Tyranids comes from those abilities. You want to be double shooting every single turn. You know, you want to be doing these abilities. If you're taking Flyrants, you want to make sure that, you know, that they're regaining health. You know, that you're potentially doing that extra point of damage with the guns. These are what you want to be thinking about doing. So you want to be throwing command points like they're going out of fashion. To be doing that, you need the opportunity to either have a lot of them in the first place, so have your brigades, but also by having a very small Imperial Guard detachment, you can take those two irritating like Waller Trait and Relic to make sure that you're stealing command points off your opponent, and that you are recycling your own as well. And that's really, really effective, really effective. So look, that's not how I'm going to play, and I'll put that out there now. But what I want to do, guys, I want to tell you the best and most competitive ways. For me, I'm going to stick to making a brigade for lots of command points, but I might be just tweaking and having a look to see if I can find the room for a battalion of Gene Stealer Cult. Now I've lost like 5 Flyrants and I'm going down to 3. I'll be looking at taking detachment of Gene Stealer Cult for some early pressure, and to put that bald presence across to really stop that second turn and the ability of the opponent to start to do damage to me. So I'm going to be starting to experiment with that, and that will be where my advice would go to you. Now, going back to the Tyranids, before we kind of conclude this video, I just think it's important to just redress those flying hive tyrants. I think when you're only going to take 3 of them, now most people would have probably opted this way anyway. I had a bit of a different mindset, but I think when you're only able to take 3, I would take the Monstrous Rending Claws and I would take the Devourers as your options. So you take both. So all 3 of those Flyrants then are capable of doing kind of a bit of everything. I think when you've got enough Flyrants, which you used to be able to do, you can be a little bit more risky and play around with your game style depending on how you want to play. So you might go for a couple of all shooty, and you might kind of go for whatever it might be. But anyway, those days are long gone, and I would say your best way to go is three tyrants that can do a bit of everything. They'll then be able to apply pressure and do well in every round of combat, every round of the game. So that's how I would build them. So I hope this video has been of use. It's very much only my first thoughts. I've only had 1 game post FAQ, and it is with Tau, not with Tyranids. So So look, I'm still working on it, guys, and I'll come back to you with loads more advanced Tyranid tactics, but I just wanted to put my first thoughts out there, give you guys something to think about, so you can kind of make your own conclusions, and hopefully it's just helped you out a little bit. So any comments, any suggestions, any things that I've missed, I'm always really keen to hear from you guys, so do put them in the comments below. And thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.